Okay.
We have two very special speakers tonight. Helen Jackard about the Golden Rule Project. She's been general manager for many years now. Helen, I don't have the exact number. And tonight we'll be talking with us about the Golden Rule sailboat and talk about its history. The project for years has been aiming to advance Veterans for Peace opposition to nuclear weapons and war, and to do so in a very memorable and intriguing way. Helen, I'll let you tell the story of the Golden Rule, and
I think they wanted Ken to go first. So.
Oh, okay, because we had. Is that agree? Okay, sorry, I have the agenda. Okay, so Ken, I'll introduce you. Ken is a member of Veterans for Peace, a member of the board. I don't know how many times around, Ken. We've been working together for the past several years. And as I remember, we met on a journey, a delegation to Vietnam for Agent Orange victims. Ken is working with the anti-nuclear working group that has just released its assessment of the current global threat of nuclear war, again, ahead of the release of the Biden administration's nuclear posture review. And he will speak tonight about the nuclear posture review. And thank you, Ken, and welcome to New York City Veterans for Peace.
Well, thank you very much, Susan. Thank you to the chapter. It's great to be here, especially great to be here with Helen. We've been working pretty closely together for quite some time now. And before I start, I can't resist a couple of Woody Allen quotes, because Woody Allen put two quotes together that I think say an awful lot about what life is like. And the first is that time is something that God invented so everything doesn't happen at once. And the second is, the worst you can say about God is he's an underachiever. He didn't quite manage to keep everything from happening at once. And Helen's been busy running up and down the coast and getting things organized for the Golden Rule. And I've been surprised how busy the nuclear posture review has been keeping me. As a result, Helen and I haven't really been able to closely coordinate our presentation. So it may be a little bit choppy. I'm going to share my screen and go through some of the slides. And I haven't had time to edit down, so I'll be kind of jumping through slides that we prepared for the Massachusetts Peace Action webinar last Saturday. There were, at one point, I don't know how many actually watched. I know one time I did glance down at the participants tab. There were 167 on the tab, and the question and answer session actually went on for almost an hour by itself. In fact, more than an hour by itself. When we finally closed it out, there were still 47 people online. So there's a lot of interest in our nuclear weapons group. Now, Sally Alice Thompson's on this call. It's great to see Sally Alice here. Sally Alice, of course, is an amazing trooper and a glutton for punishment. She was at the Peace Action webinar on Saturday. She was at the Albuquerque chapter NPR presentation on Monday evening, and here she is again. So that's dedication. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. And I'll start the slideshow. So can you all see that? Kind of nod since you're all muted. Okay, that's our sponsor, obviously, Veterans for Peace. And why do a VFP nuclear posture review? Well, it's pretty simple. Don't have to go very far. Statement 5 in our statement of purposes to end the arms race and reduce and eventually eliminate nuclear weapons. There's some lobbying afoot to change that at the next convention. So it doesn't say eventually, it says rapidly eliminate nuclear weapons. What is a nuclear posture review? Well, nuclear posture review is supposed to establish nuclear policy and strategy, capabilities, etc., for an administration, whether it's one term or 2 terms. Since 1994, each president has launched a nuclear posture review. So the first one was in 1994. Clinton launched it. And of course, that was pretty soon after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So that it was a different environment when he launched the first NPR. The Biden administration started its work in the summer last year and actually was expected to have it out in January or February. We'll see if it make it by February, but right now there's some question of whether they're actually going to release the nuclear posture review separate from a forthcoming strategic review. So as I say, each president's launched one. Clinton, with the changed environment in those days, said we're at the threshold of a decade of planned reductions. Well, of course, the planned reductions did not happen. The peace dividend that we were all so excited to be on the threshold, well, that didn't happen. And the environment continued to change. When Bush came in, it was shortly after 9/11. And so they were looking at how we defend America and not so much reliance on the nuclear weapons. They were relying more on, in addition to our armed capability, they were looking to have better intelligence, which we found out they expected to get through torture. They also were counting on an improved command communications capability. Secretary Gates, working with Obama, actually was the first one to release an unclassified NPR because Obama was insisting on transparency. And of course, Obama had recently made a wonderful speech in Prague where he talked about, ending the dependence on nuclear weapons. But then when the NPR came out, it called for much needed investments. Well, those much needed investments then were estimated to what cost us $1.5 trillion over the next 30 years. Now that estimate's $2 trillion for the next 3 decades. Trump pretty much dittoed the Obama NPR, except he added a particularly dangerous aspect, and that was he was going to add low-level nuclear weapons, low-level being 7 kilotons of TNT or less. 7 kilotons of TNT is about half the strength of the weapons that leveled Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So that's what NPRs coming out of the Defense Department have been. Back in October, when we were discussing this in the Nuclear Abolition's Weapon Group, we were concerned about what the next NPR would look like. And Alice Slater, who I know a lot of you know, Alice Slater said, well, let's not wait for the administration. Let's write our own NPR. And that's what we decided to do. And we have an NPR, which some of you have probably looked at, but it surveys the US nuclear posture vis-a-vis the nuclear posture of other nuclear capability states. And it incorporates 16 specific recommendations for what an improved nuclear posture would look like. So the state of the nuclear weapons in the world today, we've got 9 nuclear countries, and a total of 13 or 1400 nuclear weapons in the world, but between Russia and the United States, that accounts for over 12,000 of the nuclear weapons, and all the rest of them put together are just a little over 1,000. And the US provides a nuclear umbrella to all the NATO countries. That is, we say we will protect them. So all the NATO countries, in addition to South Korea, Japan, Philippines, and Australia. And we have nuclear weapons that are actually positioned, our nuclear weapons actually positioned in 5 of the NATO states. United Kingdom, Germany, Belgium, Italy, and Turkey. Something that dramatically happened in the last little over a year is that the UN status on treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons has come into effect. It's only binding on states that have ratified it, but that's an increasing number. Currently about 59 have ratified and about 90 have signed it. And it provides a basis for educating the American public, educating our political decision makers, because even a nuclear possessing country can sign on to the treaty. It provides for a time-bound process for negotiations leading to verifiable, irreversible elimination of nuclear weapons. We've gone over the past several decades from having 40,000 nuclear weapons worldwide to now having about 14,000, which is still terrible, but it shows that we know how to get rid of nuclear weapons and do it in a way that's verifiable. So we've created, as I said, 16 specific proposals for changing the nuclear posture. And they're divided into 3 sets. And the first set are immediate unilateral posture changes that we don't have to negotiate into treaties, things we could do on our own, such as announce and implement a no first use and no launch on warning policy, decommission ICBM silos. This is something that the great whistleblower, my 85 years are killing me. That we all know who I'm talking about. The Pentagon Papers.
Daniel Ellsberg.
Daniel Ellsberg has been talking about a lot, is how dangerous it is to have these nuclear weapons in silos, sitting ducks, inviting attack. And I'm not going to go through all 16 because I want to leave room for Helen, among other reasons. But so we have the 3 groups, the things we can do immediately our own, change our posture. Then there are a group which are negotiations for nuclear disarmament. And finally, there'll be a set of implementation of treaty obligations, which are things where we have to do in close collaboration, coordination, to make the treaties we sign real. Unfortunately, the United States has a bad habit of abrogating almost every treaty it's ever signed. Certainly our Native Americans can cite a long list of those. We walk out of treaties that we decide we don't like George W. Bush walking out of the ABM Treaty in 2002, and thereby destroying the stability, the strategic stability between the US and Russia that Putin has been complaining about ever since, and he has finally found necessary to mount a show of force, so we'll take it seriously. But we want to terminate the nuclear modernization program, devote those funds to addressing the problems which really affect not only our national security, global security, security of the people of the world. And with that, I'll just mention that I'm sure that a number of you have seen at least summaries of the statement that Putin and President Xi issued at the Olympics, what they're looking for strategic stability and pulling back from our movement towards war. A lot of what they said supports our nuclear posture review. And with that, I'm going to end my comments and look forward to hearing Helen's. So I will stop sharing. And I don't know, I think you'll probably want to defer the Q&A session till after Helen's talk.
Thank you, Ken. Yes, and now it's my pleasure to introduce Helen Jackard, who is the general manager. And I always think of you, Helen, as the captain of the ship of the Golden Rule, who has done extraordinary work. And thank you, Helen, for your work of how many years working on the Golden Rule, helping to publicize it, educate the public, and my goodness, right, has gone with the boat to Hawaii and back, and during this time of the pandemic has managed to keep the ship going. It's a pleasure to have you here and have you talk with us tonight about the Golden Rule. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. New York City chapter, Veterans for Peace. I'm really happy to be here. I had misunderstood what we were going to talk about today. I thought the whole thing was going to be about the nuclear posture review, but I would like to share my screen and talk with you a little bit about both, because Veterans for Peace, you know, we took on the Golden Rule project in 2012 as a national project, 2 years after the Golden Rule had been pulled up into a boatyard and was starting its rebuild process. And the Golden Rule project and the Veterans for Peace Nuclear Abolition Working Group work hand in hand together. In fact, the Golden Rule project is now in a position to share its resources with the Nuclear Abolition Working Group from the presentations we've been giving for the last 7 years. We're also able to take the messages from the Nuclear Abolition Working Group to the audiences that we have as we tour around the country. So the organizational structure is like, we're like hand in glove, if you will, as far as that's concerned. And the main purpose of both of these is to stop the possibility of nuclear war. Now, both of the organizations have other nuclear aspects to them, but the primary concern right now is that we have the two largest nuclear armed countries in conflict in Ukraine. But I wanted to emphasize that the reason that the United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons was passed is because if even only 100 nuclear bombs were exploded, for example, in the conflict between India and Pakistan, there would be 20 million deaths immediately, radioactive contamination throughout the world, and the global climate disruption from the smoke and soot that would blow into the stratosphere would cause nuclear autumn. What it would do is block out enough sunlight for about 10 years. Now, this is 100 nuclear weapons, right? About 10 years worth of crop failures, and 2 billion people are likely to starve. So this is why it is we need to be working on these issues so much. I've got a list here of all the accidental times that we almost destroyed the planet, but 1 or 2 people managed to pull us back from the brink of nuclear war. And that's why it's really important to implement some of these immediate measures, unilateral measures, to stop the possibility of nuclear war. You know, and the big one is to either get rid of the ICBMs and the whole ground-based missile system completely, because they're shooting ducks. Those are use them or lose them. They're the nuclear sponge in the center of the United States. So if they don't get launched in that few minutes window between the time somebody attacks us with nuclear weapons and the time they're launched, they don't get launched. They get destroyed right away. So we've got to get rid of them. They're only for first use, and we need to declare no first use. Both of these programs primarily are for educating. So like we can use the Veterans for Peace Nuclear Posture Review as an educational tool, as we can also the United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which, as Ken pointed out, it prohibits everything about nuclear weapons, and it's what the people of the world want. Okay. Other actions we can take, of course, is we can protest against weapons manufacturers, think tanks, universities that are developing these weapons, banks and pension funds that fund the development and production of nuclear weapons. We can show up at the board meetings. We can reach out to the workers. Who wants to have their life energy go into destroying the planet, right? We can work for political change through our representatives and legislation. We can write, we can speak, we can use humor and art and theater. Most important, we need to get creative. We need to be more than just a few people standing on a street corner every week. So one of the other things that's being done, of course, is the Golden Rule. And yes, I'm going to switch over to a different PowerPoint presentation about the Golden Rule. Right now we're in San Diego, and we're about to, tomorrow the boat is sailing to Ensenada, Mexico with a crew of 4, and Jerry and I are driving down, and then we'll port hop back north to be probably in the San Francisco Bay Area for a while. We're sitting pretty good as far as our finances are concerned. We're going to need about $50,000 in the bank before we undertake the Great Loop, and we have $30,000 in the bank right now. I've got a well-publicized schedule and route. We plan to take Golden Rule to Minneapolis by truck and sail down the entire Mississippi River, around the Gulf states, up the eastern seaboard, north of Portland, Maine to Groton, Connecticut, I think it is. And then, or well, wherever Bath Ironworks is that makes nuclear weapons. Then we're going to go back to New York City, and so we'll visit you all twice. We'll go up the Hudson River and the Erie Canal all around the Great Lakes and come back down through a different waterway back to Mobile, Alabama. That's over 10,000 miles, 28 big cities, 68 small towns, lots of presentations, and we'll reach lots and lots of people along the way who will hear about Veterans for Peace and nuclear issues everywhere we go. So just some of our things that we do, we have shore-based and water-based actions. We interact with Marshallese people. Of course, the Golden Rule was headed towards the Marshall Islands in 1958 when it was stopped, but it was going there to stop nuclear bomb testing. So we have a great connection with Marshallese people wherever we go. And we did sail to Hawaii, kind of in protest of the Trump-Kim conflict when they were talking about possibly nuking North Korea. And they were talking about maybe nuking us back. So we decided it was time to go into the Pacific to protest against that. But we were headed towards Japan, and we couldn't go to Japan because of COVID. So we wanted to go to the Marshall Islands, Guam, Okinawa, and then Japan, and we ended up needing to come back to California. And we've been up to our home port and back, and we're doing a lot of events in San Diego. Everywhere we go, we get great advertising. This was the biggest newspaper in Hawaii, and then we were just in the San Francisco Chronicle upon our return to California, and then we were in the San Diego Union Tribune, which that article got picked up by the Stars and Stripes. So we've given we give presentations to everybody. We take kids sailing. We give tours of the boat. We have guest crew members. Protest against Fleet Week, you know, where we're right out there with the big naval warships. Protested at the Bangor nuclear submarine base. Had a peace action camp, supported the Indigenous canoe journey. There's a film about us on our website. And there we are back in Hawaii after, you know, all those years of not being anywhere. So that's about the golden rule and where our status is right now. And I'm finished and ready to take questions.
Thank you, Helen and Ken. Ken can't hear you.
Yeah, I'd like to put up one more slide, which is some suggested action items for the folks who are tuned in. So I will share my screen again. Am I muted now? I think I'm not.
You're fine.
Okay. At the end of our presentation for Massachusetts Peace Action, we had a call to action with these 5 suggested actions, some of which overlap with what Helen was just saying about actions. First of all, download this nuclear posture review if you haven't already done so. Share it widely and use it in the tool in all of your anti-nuclear activities. Send copies to your congressional delegation and request meetings with them to discuss our nuclear posture. Ask your member of Congress to sponsor the Nuclear Weapons Abolition and Economic Energy Conversion Bill, which is introduced by Eleanor Holmes Norton in Congress, and it calls for Congress to immediately cancel this amazing waste of money on toys that our nuclear force cannot possibly use without destroying the life on the planet, and apply those funds to eliminate many of the problems we currently have. Support international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. ICAN campaigns. They've got one for parliamentary pledge, and I think it's about 20 of our House of Representative members have already signed on to the pledge. Be good to get more on. And cities can sign up in the ICAN Cities campaigns. And I think with the progress that this chapter and others have made in getting New York City Council to move in constructive directions, I think that's a real win. Always write letters to the editors and consider nonviolent direct action against the Mickey Matt merchants of death CEOs. There's a new coalition that Veterans for Peace is part of, which is focused on the war industries. And a big element of that is campaigning at various weapons manufacturer sites to talk to workers and having the workers requesting that they convert. Helen mentioned that. So there's a bunch of actions that you can take. We recommend you take, and I'm actually going to copy them and put them in the chat. When I put them in the chat, they won't have the numbers anymore, but they'll be there at least. And with that, I'll stop sharing screen.
Thank you both. We thought we'd go to Q&A now.
if people could use the raise hand function, it just helps me to find you and spotlight you when you ask your question. So Nick has got his hand up.
Got it. Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask Helen, when you project starting that Great Loop tour, which I think is a tremendous idea because it goes through really the heartland of militarism in this country. So I'm very, very enthusiastic about that, but I didn't know what you were hoping for your schedule. Thank you.
Yeah, I can put that back up again if you like. Oh, can I share my screen still? Yeah. Yeah, so we plan to start the trekking around the 1st of September. It'll take us a while to disassemble and truck and reassemble. So we plan to start in Minneapolis in September 22nd. It'll take around a month to do the upper Mississippi and another month to do the lower Mississippi. Then Alabama, then, you know, the southern states. I think we'll be up to you in late May or early June. And then again, we'll be there in towards the first part of July. I have this schedule fully mapped out, but I thought that people didn't need that level of detail yet.
Thank you. There are other questions?
Tom Gogan?
Thank you very much for those presentations. I want to ask Helen, will it be possible to follow your progress in some form, either live streaming or blogging or both or what,
Yes,
as you move around?
Yeah, that's part of the plan that I think is really important, is to have a daily blog or vlog about what's happened that day. So I intend to maintain that or assure that the people that are on the ground, if I'm not, do that. And then also we have a satellite tracking system. Share.garmin.com/golden rule puts a new dot on the map every 10 minutes. So if you're one of the shore support people waiting for the boat to come in, you can know fairly accurately when you need to be on the dock to receive the dock lines.
Thank you. Any other questions? Paul?
There we go. Yes, and excellent presentations by both of you. Thank you so much. I have the nuclear posture review. I've downloaded it and printed it. It does not have this call to action in it, Ken. Shouldn't that be appended to it?
Take it up at next Friday's meeting.
Okay. I think there are 5 really good suggestions, and I don't see any reason you shouldn't throw those into at the tail end of this document.
Well, I think we should probably include those in forwarding materials to activists. You know, it doesn't make sense to ask a member of Congress to call us congressman. And that sort of thing. So it depends on the audience whether the action suggestions should go with it or not, because we will be delivering this to all the members of Congress, to the White House, to offices in the Pentagon, and so forth.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to do the calling. So Georgia's got her hand up.
Is that me?
No, Georgia, me. Is there any cooperation or coordination with the About Face on both the Golden Rule and the posture plan?
Has not been thus far. I am hopeful that there's going to be collaboration with About Face on a lot more issues as we move forward. Former member of the Board of Veterans for Peace is now now one of the leaders of About Face, a staff member on About Face, and I'm hoping that this is going to lead to closer coordination in the future.
Okay, Tarek has his hand up.
Yeah, Ken, first Ken, then I have one for Helen. Ken, when you distribute these, the Nuclear Posture Review, the Veterans for Peace Nuclear Posture Review, in what form are you going to distribute it? Because it's rather long. And are you going to put it in a booklet form or brochure, or how do you intend to do that? And also how will we do it?
Yeah, we're still working on the details of how we're going to distribute to various targets. I mean, we can distribute electronically. It's probably the fastest, but not the most reliable way to get to members of Congress. The Nuclear Posture Review, I think, is a fairly enduring and not entirely time-sensitive piece of work. So that, for example, one of the things we'll be talking about in the working group is identifying key staff members of members of Congress, especially of key committees, and try to get them hand-carried, printouts of the Nuclear Posture Review. For much broader distribution, we'll probably be relying on electronic copy mostly. As you say, it is long, and it's the kind of thing that can't be attached to an email because it's too long for most email transmission. But there are other means of doing it by email using facilities like weshare.com. So we're still working on distribution, and of course, we're hoping that people will find it on Peace and Planet News.
It is on Peace and Planet News.
I know, I say I'm hoping people will find it there.
But I'm going to suggest to you that since you know some people who can create an attractive layout for a brochure or something like that with possibly some visuals in there. You always need visuals. Too much text is boring and nobody reads text. So I would suggest to explore that a little bit. Okay, you get what I'm saying.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Okay, Helen, by the way, thank you both for your presentation. I love both of you, and what you're doing also is tremendous. Helen, how many cities and towns, that's the first part of my question, do you anticipate, or do you have an idea of how many cities and towns you'll be stopping at during this great loop?
Yes, there's 28 large cities and 68 small towns.
Okay, and do you have, for instance, you had the map and the schedule there that you showed on your, in your presentation. Is that online? Is that on the website, on your Golden Rule website? Is it somewhere where I can grab it?
We'll see. It's in our brochure, and I'll make sure it's online. So the thing about having that online is that it's only been recently that we've, 6 months ago, we had to postpone this trip a year.
Right.
And so we were just in the process of deciding if we're going to have enough money to do it. And so I hadn't put out a detailed schedule yet online, but I will.
Okay. I think it's a tremendous project. Absolutely, just absolutely visionary and tremendous project. And I'm sure you're going to gather the money to do the project.
Thank you.
I'm sure of that.
Thank you.
And anybody who would like to donate to the Golden Rule.
I think Jill Godmillo was raising her hand.
Thank you. Jill?
Yeah. I just made a film about the Vietnam War for high school students, which I'm offering for free to high school teachers. And now I want this to go to high school teachers. Have you contemplated any kind of visual material or a film or a slideshow that could bring the big picture? Because they're the ones who are going to stop this thing. We're not going to make it probably. But 18-year-olds should get involved soon and be developed. And the best way I know, I'm a filmmaker, is to make a short film, you know, that a teacher could use in a class. Just wondering if you're anticipating anything like that.
The Golden Rule already has one film, and there's another in the can but being edited. And as far as instructional materials are concerned, we're planning to try to reach out to both high school and college teachers and high schools and colleges to implement a nuclear literacy program, because I find that the general public doesn't even know anything about nuclear weapons or any other nuclear issues at all. And I think that if we're going to do a climate change style shift in our thinking, then we need a whole army of educators to help us. And there may be room for movies to go along with that too.
Yeah. It's not easy to give away a film to teachers. And finally, I found the Zen educational group who's going to do it for me. And there'll be a website where the teachers can download the film, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just thinking that this might fit into their purview as a way of getting it out, because it's not easy to get work to people for free. If you want to make money, you can let a distributor take it over. But if you're not interested in, you know, rewards, then might be a great place for this. Film. Where can we see the film? Film that you've already made. Where can we see that?
On the VFP Golden Rule website, there's a link right on the homepage. There's a 10-minute and a 25-minute version of the film.
Great, thank you.
Hey, where is that buzzing coming from?
Yeah.
Now it stopped. Look how sneaky that is. As soon as I mentioned it, it stopped.
It stopped, you're right.
Okay, fine.
I thought it was my computer.
More questions?
I'm not seeing any hands right now.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks for
both.
having us.
Are you releasing them, Susan?
I see. I'm sorry.
Are you releasing them? These two?
I was
Tom,
just.
Tom has
has
his hand up again, so not quite yet. Not so fast.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I wanted to give other people a chance to ask, but first of all, I wanted to go to where Ken's presentation towards the end of point 2 about the Eleanor Holmes Norton congressional, what is it, HR 2850, I believe you said.
That's correct.
And I'm thinking, wow, Helen and the Golden Rule are going to be hitting many score cities and towns. And I would very much like to, first of all, that Eleanor Holmes Norton piece is very much in line with the kind of thing we're talking about in New York City locally at our city council when we talk about moving the money from war to our communities.
Right.
And our communities, it includes our jobs and includes creating a sustainable job base as well as social services and, you know, everything you can think of that's for peaceful purposes. So I'm wondering if there's any thought been given to kind of having some sort of materials available to folks in the different towns and cities about what they can do locally. I personally am of the opinion that it's quite important for us to try to change the narrative at as local a level as possible, of course, across as much of the country as possible. So that's my question.
Thank you. I think it's important to talk about two national ways to act. One is that the ICANN Cities Appeal, which is the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, and we were instrumental in getting the Honolulu City and County Council to pass a resolution in favor of that, which is to support the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and to take 5 other measures from the brink to stop the possibility of nuclear war with same as our immediate measures. But adding the whole Eleanor Holmes Norton bill to that as part of the action plan is a great idea. And that's why it's so important for the Golden Rule Project and the Nuclear Abolition Working Group to be working together so that we've got a common action plan and lots of great ideas for especially the advance work. So when we arrive, we would like to have those resolutions that also welcome the Golden Rule, have the rest of this in place. So yes.
Thank you. And I'll just quickly mention New York City Council passed in their last session. It's a reaffirmation of maintaining New York City as a nuclear-free area, number 1, and number 2, of withdrawing pension funds from industries that support nuclear arms. And Tom is talking about another project about move the money, take it from war spending and Pentagon spending into services that are needed at home. So it's terrific that there's so much activity going on. And thank you, Ken and Helen. I have to admit, every time I see a photo of the Golden Rule, it just raises my spirits. It's extraordinary. It is so thank you, so representative of issues that we are dealing with. Thank you both very much for being here this evening.
I have one more request.
Absolutely.
And that is that all of you keep your fingers crossed, because we've just submitted an application to Plowshares Fund for a major grant. Helen submitted it I guess last night. It was due by midnight last night. And Paul Cox and Helen and I have been working on this. And Wendy, I can never remember her last name.
Rogan.
Wendy Rogan, who produced the film that Helen mentioned, submitted this, and it's largely to support those programs that would make the trip effective throughout the nation. So keep your fingers crossed, and we'll see what happens. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just mention again, the way to donate to the Golden Rule is through Veterans for Peace Golden Rule Project. We want to keep their mission, keep them going. Thank you both.
Take the rest of the day off.
Gonna do that.
I think we're going to move now